our fabulous friends, and Michael and Blair will think about our feelings everywhere with thoughts about feelings. Thoughts about feelings, yeah!
Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to Thoughts About Feelings. I am so glad that you're here today, if you're listening, if you're watching. And I want you to know, if you've ever thought that you don't belong in the library, if you are disabled, if you're mentally ill, whatever may be going on where you think you don't belong, I want to assure you, you do belong just as you are. You always do, you always have, in the library and in the world. Don't let anyone tell you different. I am always so happy that you are here.
That was beautiful, Michael. Thank you so much for kicking us off. Today, we're going to be talking about disability. We're going to be speaking with Haben Girma. I'm so excited about it, and I wanted to give us a little smarter in seconds about disability. But of course, there are so many ways to define disability. One thing to know is that disabled is not a bad word, and disabilities can impact a person's seeing, hearing, movement, thinking, memory, learning, understanding, behavior, mental health, communication, and more. And all of those things are absolutely okay. And there's different accommodations that a person may use in order to be able to live in the world with their disability.
Most definitely. Yeah, so Haben, I'm going to be reading your incredible biography and introduction and then asking you a question. So here we go. Haben Girma is the first deafblind person to graduate from Harvard Law School. Haben Girma is an award-winning advocate, author, and keynote speaker. She earned the Helen Keller Achievement Award, reached Forbes 30 Under 30, and President Obama named her a White House Champion of Change. She believes disability challenges are opportunities for innovation, sparking new technologies that move society forward. Haben travels the globe, teaching organizations how to build stronger, resilient, and more connected communities. And Haben, I am so happy that you are here with us today. And a lot of people may not know, but once they watch this or listen to this, they may be curious how you're going to be communicating with us. So again, thank you for joining us. And could you explain, could you introduce yourself and also tell us how you're talking with us today?
Hello, everyone. My name is Haben. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and for the question about communication. So I am not hearing Michael and Blair. I am not seeing Michael and Blair, but I'm feeling your words through the Braille display. I have a Braille computer on my lap, and I run my fingers over the dots. Different dot patterns represent different letters, and different letters form words and thoughts and books. So you too will be speaking a book today, and I will be reading your book as we go along. It does mean there's a bit of a delay between when you speak and when I respond, because I'm waiting for the Braille to come through. We have a typist typing your words, and I'm reading them. And there's sometimes pressure to always be the fastest or the quickest. And it's important for us to create a culture where all voices are valued, regardless of whether it's labeled a slow voice or a fast voice, or if there's an accent or someone is signing, like using American Sign Language, or typing their words instead of voicing. And we shape culture. So with this podcast, we're helping people shift to a more accessible culture. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for that. That is an amazing encouragement. I definitely struggle with needing to be the fastest. I have a show called Smarter in Seconds. But today I will be embracing the encouragement to speak at a more accessible pace and to receive information in a new way.
I know I love that. Same thing. I am a high-pitched speaker. I have what's called a California accent, meaning I speak remarkably quick. But I'm going to be doing my best to channel my slowness and embrace it and love it so very much.
I appreciate that. And by being open about that and challenging yourself to adjust how we communicate, We're role modeling it for other people. And I don't just ask people to do this, I also do this when I communicate with other deafblind people, or I'm communicating with people whose dominant language is not English. I'm also adapting so we can meet halfway and have a conversation.
Hi, Haben again. This is Michael. My first question for you. Well, before I ask that question, I just want to acknowledge the fact that my mom loves me a lot. I know that's a very weird thing to say for a podcast where my mom is not at, but I am confident that my mom loves Haben Girma far more than she loves me, which shows you the love that Haben Girma has in the world, that a person's mom loves another human being more than their own child, whom they openly love very much.
Haben speaking, and I think your mom would probably say there's no limit to love, and there isn't a love Olympics or competition. There's enough love for everyone.
My mom would appreciate that sentiment, but she would still say, I do love Haben a lot more than Michael, as much as I do love Michael, even if there is no Love Olympics competition.
I'm going to believe that she's saying that to encourage you and motivate you to keep striving and trying.
I appreciate that so much. And again, Haben, this is Michael still. I have a library kid question for you. And I'm a librarian, so library kids want to know, how are you able to read if you can't see?
Excellent question. So, humans are amazing. We have so many different ways we can read. We can read with our eyes if we are sighted. We can read by listening if we are hearing. We can read by touch if we learn Braille. And sighted kids and adults can learn Braille just as blind kids and adults can learn Braille if they have sensitivity in their fingers, and that's something you can actually train yourself to do. We can train our fingers to be more sensitive. When I first started learning Braille, it was a mess. It was just a jumble of random dots and didn't make any sense. But through practice, I trained my fingers, and it got easier and more fun and comfortable to read through Braille, through my fingers. And I want to stress that Braille is not a language. It's a reading tool. There's Braille Arabic, Braille Spanish, Braille French, Braille Amharic. My family is from Ethiopia and Eritrea, and I've had the honor of touching Amharic Braille and Tigrinya Braille. So it's in all different languages. And libraries can connect with the National Braille and Talking Book Library, which distributes Braille and talking books throughout the country. They could also provide Braille computers for people who want to be able to read books that they download onto their computer. You can read on a Braille computer, or you can read on paper Braille. Lots of different choices.
Well, that's fabulous. Blair's speaking now, and there are a lot of thoughts about feelings when it comes to different ways of reading. All the time on social media, I see this argument about how audiobooks are quote unquote not real books. And I do not believe that. I think that's a really inaccessible way of looking at things. I do think that the experience of maybe reading versus listening versus Braille might be a different way to read, but it's all forms of reading. What do you think about that, Haben?
Every person is different. Some people process information better through hearing, others process information better through sight, others through touch, and we shouldn't judge people how they choose to read. Each of those different ways of reading are equally valid and valuable. It's all reading.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that's an important bit of information for folks to take with them, that there's no shame in audiobooks, there's no shame in reading a book with your eyes, and there's no shame in reading through Braille or other forms of reading. And I guess I'll ask everyone, what's your favorite form of reading? Michael, maybe you can answer first, and then Haben.
Michael speaking, my favorite form of reading is audiobooks. I adore audiobooks so much. I've been listening to audiobooks since I was a child. Me and my brother used to actually listen to books on tape while we play video games. So we would be playing Crash Bandicoot, we would play Donkey Kong, and we would turn the volume all the way down, and we would listen to Chronicles of Narnia and other stories. So for me, it's very nostalgic to listen to audiobooks, to read via listening, which I think is very important, very vital for all readers. But I'll always love a good hard book cover as well. I love book covers. I am a person who loves to pick a book based on a beautiful book cover and one that's very representative of various communities. How about you, Haben? What books do you enjoy, or which format do you enjoy listening to, reading with most of all?
So, for me, access comes down to being able to touch things. That's my favorite and strongest sense. So reading books in Braille. But I do have an audiobook story, since that's your favorite form of reading. When I was working on my book and it was coming to publication, we decided it would be great to also have my book available as an audiobook. And they offered to get a voice actor to read my book. And I said, wait a minute, I can read. It's different. I know it's different from how other people do their audiobooks, but I want to try this. And if you don't like it, that's okay, but let's at least give this a try. So we printed my book in Braille, and we were in a recording studio like this one, and I had a copy of my Braille book, and I was reading it, physically reading it with my fingers, and voicing out loud what I was reading. They had never experienced that before, but it still worked. It's a different way of creating audiobooks, but it's just as valid and just as beautiful, if I'm allowed to say that about my own book. But I'm grateful I had the privilege of reading Braille. Many blind kids are not taught Braille because the idea is, wait a minute, we have tech. Why should people learn Braille if they could just listen to audiobooks? But there are blind people who read best through their fingers rather than through audio, and Braille evolves just alongside tech, and we have Braille computers for that reason. Thanks for letting me share that story. What about Blair? What's your favorite reading format?
I'm definitely also an audiobook girly, and you're absolutely allowed to say that about your own book. I also recorded the audiobook for my book, Read This to Get Smarter, but I really struggle with reading out loud, and it turns out that's also the case for books that I've actually written myself. And it brings me to kind of my next question, which is kind of the frustration, anger and frustration, those are also feelings that we may experience. And I try to practice patience, but I find with myself, having ADHD, being dyslexic, I've experienced a lot of frustration when it comes to my own abilities. And I think that is something that's not always discussed when it comes to disability and neurodivergence or neurodiversity. And so I wonder if that's something that either of you have experienced.
For me, I felt a lot of frustration around people expecting me to think in a certain way or learn in a certain way. I feel traditional spaces of learning only imagine non-disabled people coming into those spaces to learn. And if your mind and learning style is different, or if you're blind or you're deaf, it feels like you're not welcome there, and society is saying your right to books or your right to learning is not as important. that falls under the umbrella of ableism. Ableism is the belief and practice that disabled people are inferior to non-disabled people. For example, if someone builds a school and there are only stairs going up to the front door, there's no ramp for kids who use wheelchairs, there's no elevator or no alternative way for someone with a wheelchair to get into the school, that's an example of ableism. And someone might argue, wait a minute, we didn't mean to exclude kids who use wheelchair. We just never thought about it before. Unintentional ableism is still ableism. Part of the problem is planners are not thinking about disabled kids and adults when they build buildings, programs, apps and websites. And we need to start planning for all different kinds of minds and bodies when we're creating programs, books, apps, and websites.
Michael speaking. Blair, can you repeat the question one more time so I can be able to answer it fully?
Absolutely. I was asking about if there's ever times where you experience frustrations, maybe with yourself, with the world, when it comes to your own abilities, or maybe how you're viewed when it comes to just your own way of interacting with the world.
Thank you very much. Michael speaking again. And just thank you, Haben, for having said all those eloquent, wonderful things that you said. Very insightful. I learn new things every time I get to listen to you. And to directly answer Blair's question, I would say for myself, I think a lot of times in feeling othered, for me, it comes more so from my observations than looking at myself, especially from a library perspective. I get so many questions from library grown-ups who honestly ask if their disabled children, if their neurodivergent children belong in the library, if they can use the library. I spoke about it briefly at the beginning of this episode, and it's something worth echoing all the time because people talk about it constantly. And it's to say that, yes, absolutely, neurodivergent kids belong in the library. Disabled kids belong in the library. I would argue that they especially belong in the library because the library is for everyone. For so very long, these kids, these disabled kids, these neurodivergent kids feel like they don't belong in the library because they may be making noise, or as you said, there may not be accessible ramps. The shelving in the libraries, the aisles may not be wide enough for them to get by. The library workers may shush them for being very excited for discovering library joy for the first time in their life. And I have tried to work very hard in my library career to assure those grown-ups and those library kids that yes, the library is a quiet place, but it also is the house of joy. It's where you can let out a shriek of joy if it's the first time you get a library card, the first time you find the perfect book, the first time you're able to read via audiobook, via physical book, via Braille, whatever it may be. So I think that is the best way that I would answer that question.
Love that.
Haben, my next question for you is, what is disability awkwardness, and how can we approach it? How can we be better with it?
Disability awkwardness is not knowing what to say, not knowing what to ask, and then allowing that to turn into fear that keeps you from connecting with someone with a difference, whether that's a visible disability or a non-apparent, non-visible disability. So that tension of not knowing what to say, how to ask, should you help, should you leave them alone, that creates that awkwardness. And one thing that helps, I feel, is humor. And a lot of disabled people end up building a sense of humor because it helps dispel some of the awkwardness around disability. And that takes time and work to build up your sense of humor. There are books in the library on how to improve your humor. There are improv classes people can take to build up your humor. It's great, not just for disabled people, but for non-disabled people too. And part of humor is overcoming your fear of a joke falling flat, of not knowing what to say or what questions to ask or the right words. For me, I'm okay with the unknown. I'm okay not being perfect, not getting things right all the time. Every disabled person identifies differently. Some people embrace the word disabled. Others would prefer special needs, differently abled. There's a lot of diversity. So you are not expected to know everything. It's okay not to know everything. And if you have the courage, say hello and ask, how do you identify? Would you like any assistance? What can we do to make the library more accessible?
It's okay to not know everything. Thank you, Haben. I think we should put that on coffee cups and T-shirts and sweaters and so much more. My next question for you, if you don't mind, it's a bit of a heavy question, a bit of a loaded question, so please do not hesitate to ask me to repeat elements of it, is I first met you alongside Eric Harris, who's a wonderful basketball player, if you want to look up the incredible Eric Harris. We met, and prior to me meeting you and Eric, I did not realize that mental health is truly considered to be a disability. I suffer from various diagnoses of mental health disorders and struggles, and I always thought the two were separate, mental health and disability, until I spoke with both you and Eric, and you very eloquently and very kindly assured me and insisted that mental health is indeed a disability. So my question to you is, one, is how do disability and mental health intersect? And also, as part of that, which we can also do a follow-up question, is social media plays a big role of that. And you do a wonderful job on social media. I love that you have the courage and you just enjoy putting yourself out there and telling your story in your own way. And I've learned so much from you. It's why I've started including image descriptions and video descriptions in my social media posts. I know that Blair has also begun to do that in her social media posts. So if you have an answer to that TED Talk, please do it as best you can.
I want to again thank you for adding visual descriptions to your videos. It helps blind people have access on Instagram and the other social media apps, because blind people are on social media and we want to learn from Michael and Blair. And descriptions let us know what is the visual content in the video or photo so we can access the same information and be part of the same conversations. Disability is something I love to have conversations about. And a related question might be, why does it matter whether mental health is labeled as a disability or not? And one reason why it might matter is because under the Americans with Disabilities Act and other civil rights laws, disabilities have legal rights. People with disabilities have legal rights to accommodations. So having mental health disabilities, recognizing that as a disability means if you need an accommodation at your work or at your school, you are protected. You have a right to ask to have books in audio rather than text if your disability asks for that. If there are other adjustments you need for ADHD, dyslexia, apps that make doing work easier, you legally can ask for accommodations that allow you to bring your best talents to your school or work or other organizations. So that's why it matters whether or not your experiences falls under the label of disability. And even then, it's up to you to choose whether you want to embrace that term or not. There's lots of diversity within this field, and it's okay to disagree and have different feelings about it. Some people say, don't use the word disabled. It's a bad word because it has DIS, and words with DIS are obviously bad. That's not true. We actually have quite a few words that start with DIS that are neutral or positive. I'll share some examples. Display, discussion, discover, Disney. We shape language. Libraries shape language. And we get to choose if we want this to be something negative, neutral, or positive. So I feel disability is a part of the human experience. We're all different in different ways, different hair color, eye color, different ways of thinking, different ways of feeling and seeing and hearing, and that's okay. Our world was designed for non-disabled people, though, and that's why we have laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act to insist that people with disabilities still deserve access to libraries and schools and works, and that includes accommodations to ensure that there are ramps or audiobooks or other tools to ensure we have equal access. That was an excellent question, Michael.
Michael speaking, that was a beautiful answer. Blair, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, I'd also like to jump in on that a little bit, if that's okay. This is Blair speaking. And so when I was growing up, my younger sister, Chelsea, she's disabled. And that's how we didn't use the word disability because there is and was so much stigma around it. I think now my family have embraced that word, but the way it was kind of positioned was, Chelsea's the disabled sister and I'm the non-disabled sister. And I understand, and I don't hold my parents or kind of the teachers, anything against them for that. But I think what you're speaking to, Haben, about the accommodations and why it's so important to have the legal right to those terms is because sometimes it was hard for me to get the accommodations that I needed. And there were ways that I was able to self-accommodate, and a huge way I was able to do that was the library. It turns out that in the middle of the day every day, I was having neurodivergent burnout where it was too overstimulating to be around all the other students. I also was bullied, and so if I went to the library, there was an adult there to help make sure I wasn't getting bullied. And so the way I self-accommodated was by going to the library, decompressing, reading the world record books. I loved the Guinness Book of World Records, and I would try to memorize the dictionary. And that was my way of self-accommodating. But I think that it's also interesting that sometimes when there's a family or a group of people, sometimes people try to compare other people's abilities, and it might prevent people from getting the accommodations and the care and services that they need by saying, this person is more disabled, or this person is less disabled, or this person isn't. And I'm just so glad that you're one of the many people who helps to educate folks that there's so many things when it comes to disability, that it's a neutral term, that is a description. And if you choose to identify it, that's fine. If you don't, that's also fine. But to make sure that people aren't separated from that. So I just wanted to share that. So thank you for the space to share that, Haben and Michael.
You're very welcome. Traditionally, we were dividing people as having more severe conditions, more severe disabilities, and then on the other hand, mild. But creating those kind of hierarchies are harmful for all of us. It also creates this mindset of limitation. I've had many people say, oh, I shouldn't request accommodations because it takes away from other people who may need it more. But we need to have a mindset of abundance. everyone deserves accommodations. Can we choose to not get accommodations because we're worried it takes from other people, or we're worried we're not as deserving? You can, but it's more exhausting, and you're holding yourself back in the long run when you deny yourself opportunities or things that could make life easier, school or work or other organizations easier for us. So it's a conversation, often an internal conversation a lot of people have. And I just wanted to highlight that the ideas of severe and mild are actually arbitrarily created, and everybody deserves equal access, and every need is just as important.
Beautifully said, Haben. Thank you so much. Now I think we'll do the part of our show where we tell you who our episode is brought to us by. We don't have sponsors for the first season, and so this episode is going to be brought to us by checking in with our bodies, checking in with ourselves, and Haben suggested perhaps giving some head pats to your pet or to your animals. But in our desire to demonstrate proper etiquette and to break through disability awkwardness, we wanted to let you know I'll ask Haben to reiterate what you said earlier about the best etiquette to use when somebody has a service animal, if that's okay, Haben.
Every service animal partnership is different, and for some partnerships, it's disruptive if you pet the dog. So for example, if a blind person is walking down the street with their guide dog and you reach over and pet the dog, it's like putting a hand over someone's eyes, and that's dangerous. So every situation is different. If you see a situation where someone is sitting down, their dog is relaxed, you can come over and ask, "What a beautiful dog. May I pet your dog?" And if they say yes, you can pet the dog.
Michael speaking. Haben, would it be okay if I pet your service dog?
Absolutely. His name is Milo, and he's very gregarious. He loves librarians.
Thank you so much. I can't wait. I'm going to pet Milo.
And Haben, this is Blair speaking. May I also pet Milo, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go pet Milo. Hi, Milo. Haben said I could pet you. Well, that was fantastic. Today's episode was brought to you by giving a pup or a cat or an animal in your life a head pat with the permission of the owner. And if it's a service dog, extra special permission of the owner, because that dog is at work.
I love it.
Dogs are a wonderful way for us to recharge and recenter ourselves. And sometimes when I'm stressed out, I reach down and pet his soft, fluffy ears, and I feel a lot better.
I definitely feel better after petting Milo. Thank you, Haben.
Michael speaking. I feel so much better after petting Milo. I've had the privilege to pet Milo previously after asking permission from Haben, and I always feel so much more special, so much better afterwards. But I just thought of a potential library kid question. Haben, what is your dog's name your main question from kids when you see them?
Definitely from kids and adults. They're often asking, "What's your dog's name?" And my name is Haben, and my dog's name is Milo. Milo is an easier name to remember than Haben. So later people will be like, "Oh, Haben's Milo's mom instead of saying my name.
That's so funny, Haben. This is Blair. And sometimes people remember the name of my show more than they remember my name. I'll respond to it. They'll call me the Smarter in Seconds lady, just like they call Michael the librarian or the library guy. And so getting called Milo's mom is definitely, it's so funny how people end up giving you nicknames.
I feel honored to be known as his mom. He is a very fantastic ambassador for accessibility. Do you like your nickname, Blair?
I 100% like my nickname. I first got it, well, I think it's common when you're an internet person for people to give you those nicknames, but I actually got mine from Zendaya when I met her at the Essence Black Women in Hollywood brunch. I was standing next to Letitia Wright by some miracle, and Zendaya said hello to Letitia because I believe they worked together, and then turned and said, "Are you the Smarter in Seconds lady?" And that was very validating because I'm a big fan of Zendaya. And it's just kind of stuck, and sometimes people will just sing the theme song to me, and my theme song is just like the name of the song, Smarter in Seconds, to a kind of, upbeat melody, which is fun. It's cool when people know your work, even if they don't know your name, because it helps me feel like I've made an impact.
You have had a powerful impact educating people on so many topics, helping them become smarter. It may have started out in a few seconds, but over time it's become hours and months of education.
Thank you so much. And, on that note, we were talking about accessibility. And one of the things I wanted to do was work with you on an episode of Smarter in Seconds about disability, about blindness, about being deaf. But I realized that if I'm going to do that work, then I should probably step up and include more accessibility. I've always included subtitles in my videos, but I hadn't always included visual descriptions. And so I think when I got familiar with your work, I started to commit more to that. And so now all of my posts have image descriptions, and we'll have that as well for every post that we do with our podcast. And Michael's been doing that as well. But I wonder if you have recommendations, Haben, about other tools and ways that we can practice fighting ableism in our lives and embracing accessibility.
Excellent question. So, subtitles, the text on screen on videos, help people who are deaf and hard of hearing and sighted, who can see what's on screen, access the audio content of what you're saying, what you're teaching them. Blind people who are hearing can hear what you're saying, but deaf-blind people who are not able to see the subtitles don't access subtitles. They're also sometimes called captions. That phrase is used interchangeably. So a new strategy to help deaf-blind people access the video is to have a descriptive transcript. And it's also kind of like a screenplay, a description of what's happening and the audio of what's being said, all created together. That does take time, and a description can be summarized. If one doesn't have the resources of time to do a full descriptive transcript, they can do a video description summary of the main points. What's the message here? What lesson is being taught? So that deaf-blind people also get access to the videos. So to summarize, captions for sighted, deaf, and hard of hearing folks, descriptive transcripts for deaf-blind folks, and visual descriptions for blind hearing folks who are hearing your voice, but if there is a visual element to the lesson on screen, they would get access to that visual element through a description. And you can either add the description as audio in the video, called audio description, or you could put it as text in the post, which is called alt text, short for alternative text, or just called image description.
Fabulous. I'm going to start doing that. Thank you so much, Haben.
Thank you for being open to learning and increasing accessibility for everyone.
Michael speaking, I think we only have a couple questions left for you, Haben. Thank you so much for the generosity of your time. And my last question for you before Blair possibly asks one more question is, really, I just want to say thank you for all that you've done. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for being my friend. As we talk about thoughts about feelings, you, myself, and Blair, I've had such wonderful conversations with you. I have suffered, again, from various mental health components, and I've been lucky enough to share some honest, vulnerable conversations with you and just learn so much, not just about disability and accessibility and how libraries, librarians, and educators can do a better job, but just about life and just about being a friend, about you using your humor, you using your storytelling, you being kind enough to answer my questions about how I should approach social media. So I just want to ask you if you had any things that you would like to tell me, Blair, and our audience, and also perhaps from a library kid perspective, how you would describe the word disability to a library kid.
Disability is a mismatch between the environment and the person. So if the environment is only built imagining people who walk, and somebody, a library kid, can't walk, that mismatch sparks the disability. If the library or other space is fully step-free and all the aisles are wide enough and everything can be reached from a chair, then someone who is using a wheelchair is not at a disadvantage. And it's like the disability isn't there. So the heart of this definition, the social definition of disability, is a mismatch between the environment and the body-mind. So it's also about our minds. If an environment expects us to think at a certain speed, or if an environment expects us to process information in a certain way, that's a mismatch between that environment and our minds and bodies. So our bodies aren't the problem. Our minds aren't the problem. It's the mismatch, the relationship, that's the problem. And if we redesign our world so that all our bodies and minds are welcomed, then it's a more accessible and equal world for all of us. I'm going to pause and check in. Blair, do you have any follow-up? Any way I could clarify that?
No, that's super helpful. And that was actually Michael's questions. I might ask one final question. So how have you experienced, this is something that Michael and I spoke about during our first episode, which was how we view our visibility in the world and kind of our rise to prominence. And I wonder if for you, it's been something to adapt to, if like how people view you, if that's changed how you view yourself, being recognized by the White House, being recognized as a disability rights activist, just as an amazing and kind person. How has that experience been like for you? Do you have any feelings about that?
I want to rephrase the question to make sure I'm understanding. I think you're asking, how has public recognition impacted my experience?
Absolutely. That's a better way to put the question.
Some ways it has made life easier. Having recognition from the White House, Harvard, and other spaces. But in other times, it makes absolutely no difference. So when I call a taxi to pick me up, so I want to go to the airport or I want to go meet a friend, the driver pulls up takes one look at me and decides to cancel the ride. That happens all the time. It's illegal. Discriminating against disabled people with guide dogs is illegal, but it still happens. The other day, I wanted to go meet a friend at a hotel, and the staff at the hotel said, absolutely not, you can't come in here. And that's illegal again, and it's frustrating to have to deal with that. All the recognition I've received has no impact on that. If I were to I will say that having that kind of recognition helps educate more people. People who know I've had that recognition may be more inclined to listen to what I have to say, which helps me teach more people about accessibility and ableism. And that is powerful. I am grateful for all the followers I have on social media and those who encourage other people to follow me or read my book, because it helps me educate more people. And when more people are educated, that means more drivers will know it's not okay to discriminate against people with guide dogs, or hotel staff will know that it's not okay to deny access to disabled people, whether they're using wheelchairs or have assistance dogs or have other accommodations needs. So it is sparking hope. The work we're all doing to educate more people to be smarter, more aware, more accessible, it's increasing accessibility. Sometimes it's exhausting to have to shoulder that work, and I do take breaks. Sometimes I'll choose not to wear an advocate hat because I want a break, and that's okay. Advocacy should be a choice, and we can step away from it when we need to, and then come back and keep advocating.
Thank you so much, Haben. That's so important, I think, for folks to remember. I've spoken a lot about how even though one of us or a person from a given community might have recognition and visibility, it doesn't mean that that always comes with systemic change. And that's why it's so important to continue advocating, to continue educating folks, to try to get folks to come into the library where they can self-educate and do that in the accessible, different ways that we learn, that we experience the world. And so I thank you so much for being here with Michael and I. I thank you so much for the work that you do. And yeah, I think we'll close maybe with some recommendations for more books to read, more places to learn, and then we'll see folks next time. Do you have any book recommendations, Haben and Michael?
I have lots of book recommendations. So, the Anti-Ableist Manifesto by Tiffany is a great book to teach you to notice ableism. It comes up in many different forms, and we all need to be more aware so we can be advocates. The Anti-Ableist Manifesto, and it's available as an audiobook, ebook, print book. Another one I want to recommend is Year of the Tiger by Alice Wong. It's the memoir of Alice Wong, who's a disability advocate based in San Francisco, and her journey of advocacy. And I love learning about people's journeys of maybe at the beginning not sure if you belong in the room, at the table, and then over time building up the confidence and courage to insist that you do belong, and then later helping other people also enter the room and making the room more accessible. So, Year of the Tiger by Alice Wong, fabulous book. What about you, Michael?
Michael speaking, I did an internal little dancey dance when you mentioned Alice Wong's book. I love Alice Wong, such an incredible disability advocate. I love all of the books that you recommended. They're not ones I would have said off the top of my head, but if I would have had a computer to search for books to recommend, they definitely would have come to mind. I would definitely recommend Bodies Are Cool by Tyler Feder. It's incredible. It's an incredible picture book for children, for all people, honestly, but it's geared towards kids, where it has characters with prosthetic legs, characters in wheelchairs, characters who are in the process of transitioning as they become the selves they want to love as transgender folks. Just such a beautiful book. I would, of course, recommend your book. You talked about how proud of it you were earlier. I echo those sentiments. It is an incredible book, so I do encourage you to read Haben's incredible, wonderful book. Roll With It by Jamie Sumner is just an incredible book. It's such a cool book because the character just so happens to be in a wheelchair. It's not necessarily the entire what's the word? It's not the basis. It's not the focal point of the story. It shows us that we can all have a story to tell. And then there has to be one more book that I want. There's so many books. I would honestly encourage you to check in with your local library. Ask your local librarian, your teachers, what books they would recommend. I love how many people are falling in love with books about accessibility and disability. And most of all, I love that people like our good friend Haben are telling their stories, because we all have a powerful voice and we deserve to tell it in the format of books and audiobooks.
I absolutely agree. Blair, do you want to share a favorite book?
Thank you, Haben, and thank you, Michael, for those recommendations. The only book that I would add to that amazing list is Demystifying Disability by Emily Ladau. It's an amazing book that breaks down disability, talks about the different aspects of disability, like you mentioned, like the social model of disability, the individual model of disability, and really just breaks it down to the basics. Amazing book by 10 Speed Press, again from Emily Ladau. Just an amazing book that I would highly recommend and add to that list. And of course, all of the things that we recommend will be in our show notes, so that way they are accessible to everyone and to take their learning further.
I also want to touch on Michael expressing appreciation for our friendship. I think forming friendship can be particularly hard for kids and adults who are struggling with ableism and society telling us we don't matter or we don't belong. And finding people who insist you do matter, you do belong, and will walk with you or roll with you as you move across different types of barriers. Those kinds of friends are precious, and we need to all put in the effort and time to get to know people so we can learn how to be allies alongside them and walk or roll with them, so that we all have friends who help us feel heard and seen and appreciated.
I mean to that. I love that.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts about feelings with us today, with myself, with Blair, with our good friend Haben, with Milo, all of our friends. Thank you so much for being part of this. A special thank you to the Torreya Hall Pittman South branch of the Berkeley Public Library. And as I sit here today, a song keeps playing in my head. It's I Love My Body by Mother Moon. It goes, I love my body from my head to my toes. I love the way I look when I look in the mirror. And I can't stop thinking about that after our conversations as we look around with the various picture books, the artwork by Robert Trujillo, and we should all be able to just love ourselves more and more, our disabled selves, our mentally ill selves, our wonderful selves, our neurodivergent selves, again, with our friends Haben, Milo, myself, Blair, Berkeley Public Library, and I hope you begin to love yourself more and more, as you should, day by day. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And our action item for today is that if you're in a place where you don't love yourself, that's okay. That's understandable. That's relatable. We don't always love ourselves 100%, especially if we have the world telling us that we're broken, we're flawed, or that we don't belong. That's something that a lot of us have experienced. But if you can't love yourself, at least try to respect yourself. Try to make sure that you factor in things like eating enough food, drinking enough water, taking care of yourself, getting some movement if you like doing that, and maybe reading some books, talking to your loved ones, and maybe even making a new friend. So if you're not at a place of loving yourself, try to at least find a way to respect yourself. And there are so many amazing books about getting you on that journey of self-love. Maybe you want to start with Body Neutrality by Bethany Myers, but I believe in you. You can do it, and you'll get there, inshallah, God willing.
This was a fabulous recording, and I was thrilled to be able to have a conversation with Blair and Michael, and I hope to continue staying in touch and learning from both of you. So thank you, both of you.
Thank you,
Thank
Haben.
you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Blair.
Woo! We did it.
We've got some thoughts about feelings. Think of the places we can go and the people we'll meet, the things that we'll see. What do you think? Are you feeling me? Thoughts about feelings. All the ideas we can share with our fabulous friends and Michael and Blair. We'll think about our feelings everywhere with thoughts about feelings. Thoughts about feelings.